Hisashi Ouchi, The Radiation, 1999. In 1999, a Japanese technician named Hisashi Ouchi was accidentally exposed to a massive blast of radiation at a nuclear plant. While he looked completely normal at first, the radiation had completely destroyed his DNA. His body entirely lost the ability to grow new cells. Over the next 83 days, his skin slowly fell away and his internal organs failed. Even though he begged to be let go, doctors kept reviving his heart to study the effects of radiation, trapping him inside a living nightmare until his final breath. The Man Eaten by Rats in Prison, 1800. In the 1800s, underground prison cells in parts of Europe were dark, wet, and filled with insects and rats. One disturbing story tells of a prisoner who had been badly beaten before being chained inside a tiny stone cell. His injuries were severe. Blood covered parts of the floor, and there was no light except for a tiny opening high above him. During the first night, he reportedly heard scratching sounds echoing through the darkness. At first, it was only a few rats. But over the next several days, more appeared. The prisoner was too weak to fight them off properly. Guards rarely checked the cell, and the underground area was already infested. Imagine sitting alone in complete darkness, hearing dozens of tiny footsteps around you while knowing nobody is coming to help. The story became infamous because of the psychological terror the man likely experienced. Before dying, the Byford Dolphin, explosive decompression, 1983. In 1983, a group of deep-sea divers were resting inside a highly pressurized dive chamber on a North Sea oil rig. Because of a tragic mistake, a heavy metal clamp was opened before the inner doors were safely sealed. In a fraction of a second, the pressure dropped violently. The air expanded so fast that the blood inside 3 of the divers literally boiled instantly. The fourth diver, who was standing closest to the door, was explosively blasted through a tiny 24-inch gap. It remains one of the most violent industrial accidents in human history. The Hinterkaifeck murders, 1922. In 1922, a family living on a remote farm in Germany noticed terrifying things happening. Unexplained footprints leading from the woods straight to their house, odd scratching sounds in the attic, and a set of missing house keys. But instead of leaving, they stayed. Days later, the entire family and their new maid were found dead, brutally slaughtered with a pickaxe. The most disturbing part? Forensic evidence proved that someone had been living secretly in their attic for days before the attack. Even worse, whoever did it stayed on the farm for nearly a week after the murders, eating their food, sleeping in their beds, and feeding the farm animals while 6 bodies lay cold just rooms away. The killer was never caught. The girl trapped inside a water tank, 2013. In 2013, guests staying at a hotel in Los Angeles started reporting something strange. The water coming from the taps looked dark. Some said it smelled unusual. Others complained that the pressure kept failing. At first, nobody thought much of it, but when maintenance workers finally climbed onto the roof to inspect the water tanks, they made a horrifying discovery. Inside one of the tanks was the body of a young woman. Investigators later believed she had somehow entered the tank alone and became trapped inside. The metal walls were slippery. The hatch was extremely difficult to open from the inside, and the freezing water made movement harder over time. One of the most disturbing parts of the case was imagining her trying to stay afloat in complete darkness while nobody below had any idea what was happening. The mystery surrounding the incident later spread all over the internet and became one of the most haunting modern cases ever discussed online. The man who fell into a crematorium furnace. One of the most horrifying industrial accidents involved a crematorium worker operating machinery near an active furnace. According to reports, the worker was performing routine duties when he suddenly slipped near the opening of the furnace area. Co-workers nearby heard shouting and immediately tried to react, but the heat was so extreme that rescue became nearly impossible within moments. The entire incident happened incredibly fast. What made the story especially disturbing was how ordinary the day had been before the accident. Just minutes earlier, everything was normal. Then suddenly, panic filled the room as workers realized what had happened. The accident became infamous online because of how terrifying and sudden it was. It also served as a reminder of how dangerous industrial workplaces can become when even a single mistake happens near heavy machinery or extreme heat.